A little boy left a note on a motorcycle. 150 Hell's Angels surprised him at his school. A boy carrying his parents' shame leaves a desperate question on a stranger's motorcycle. When the club discovers he and his teenage guardian face losing everything, including each other, they mobilize an army to prove that family is chosen, not inherited. Desmond sat alone at the cafeteria table, his lunch tray before him like an accusation. The scrambled eggs had gone cold, congealing into something that looked less like food and more like regret. He'd learned to eat quickly, to finish before anyone noticed him, but today his stomach twisted too tight to swallow. 3 boys approached from the popular tables, their sneakers squeaking against linoleum with the confidence of the untouchable. Desmond recognized them. Everyone did. They were the sons of city council members, of business owners, of people who mattered. "Hey, Quinn." The tallest one stopped beside his table, holding a cafeteria garbage bin. "We brought you something." Before Desmond could move, the boy upended the bin over his tray. Napkins, food scraps, and liquids cascaded across his lunch. A milk carton splattered his shirt. "Like your parents, right? Trash belongs with trash." The boys laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "At least they're being useful now, making license plates for 3 to 5. Desmond's hands clenched beneath the table. His mother's face flashed in his memory, the last time he'd seen her handcuffed and crying in the courtroom. He wanted to shout that she was sick, that addiction was a disease, that his father had made bad choices but that didn't make them trash. He wanted to defend them, to defend himself. But getting suspended meant Nora would have to leave work. She'd lose hours they couldn't afford to lose, money that barely kept them in their apartment. So Desmond sat frozen, his face burning, his throat closing around words he couldn't speak. 2 teachers stood near the serving line. They saw everything. One glanced at Desmond, then looked away. The other studied her phone with sudden intensity. Nobody intervened. Nobody ever did, not for the son of convicted drug dealers. The cafeteria noise continued around him like he didn't exist. Desmond stood carefully, his ruined tray in shaking hands, and walked to the disposal area. He dumped everything, wiped his shirt with rough paper towels that only spread the stains, and went to the bathroom to wait out the rest of lunch period. In the cracked mirror, a small boy with hollow cheeks stared back. 10 years old but looking 8, swimming in a donated shirt that had been washed so many times the collar had frayed. His dark hair needed cutting. His face carried the same sharp features as his mother's, the same deep-set brown eyes that made people look twice and then turn away. "Nobody sees me," he thought. "They only see the bad things my parents did." He'd been carrying the note in his pocket for 6 days, the paper softening from being folded and unfolded, read and reread. He'd written it in his neatest handwriting, trying to make the words look less desperate than they felt. After school, Desmond walked his usual route home, 4 miles through neighborhoods that shifted from comfortable to struggling, past houses that got smaller and closer together, past corner stores with barred windows and graffiti that never quite got cleaned. He stopped at Murphy's Diner, a squat brick building that smelled of coffee and frying meat. The parking lot held the usual afternoon crowd, work trucks, sedans, and 8 motorcycles lined up in a row like soldiers at attention. Desmond had seen them there before, big men in leather vests covered with patches he couldn't fully read from a distance. They looked dangerous. They looked strong. They looked like people nobody pushed around or dumped garbage on or treated like they were invisible. The bikes gleamed in the afternoon sun, chrome catching light like promises. Desmond approached slowly, his heart hammering. He pulled out the note, now soft as cloth from his constant handling. One motorcycle stood slightly apart from the others, an older model with a worn leather saddlebag hanging from the rear. Something about it called to him, maybe the way it looked both battered and unbreakable, scarred but still standing. Desmond glanced toward the diner windows. He could see shapes inside, hear the rumble of deep voices and occasional laughter. His hands trembled as he unfolded the note one last time, reading his own question. "How do you be strong when everyone thinks you're garbage? When they look at you and only see the bad things your family did? I try to be good, but nobody sees me. They only see my last name. Desmond." He tucked it carefully under the motorcycle's mirror, wedging it so the wind wouldn't steal his one attempt at reaching out. Then he ran, his backpack bouncing against his thin shoulders, not looking back until he'd turned the corner. Midnight found Maverick standing under a streetlight 3 blocks from the diner, reading the note for the 5th time. He'd discovered it when he came out for a smoke after the club meeting, the paper fluttering like a trapped bird beneath his mirror. The handwriting was a child's, careful block letters, the kind that showed someone trying their very best. Some words had been erased and rewritten. A water stain blurred the corner, though whether from rain or tears, Maverick couldn't tell. He knew this shame. God, he knew it. 20 years ago, he'd been a kid whose father went to prison for armed robbery. 11 years old, wearing the crime like a scarlet letter stitched across his back. The neighborhood kids had called him Robber's son until the words became his name, until he almost forgot he'd been born with any other identity. Later, at 19, Maverick had taken a fall for a crime he didn't commit. A friend's father was a prosecutor with connections, and when the situation went sideways, Maverick, already marked by his father's record, became the obvious scapegoat. 10 years in prison for aggravated assault he didn't commit. 10 years before new evidence and a determined public defender finally cleared his name. He understood systematic persecution. He understood being guilty by association, by last name, by the accident of birth. He understood this kid's desperate question in ways most people couldn't. Maverick folded the note carefully and returned to the clubhouse. The meeting room fell silent when he read it aloud. 50 men, hardened by life and road, sat listening to a child's plea. Several had similar stories: fathers in prison, mothers struggling, childhoods marked by someone else's sins. "We find him," said Chains, the club president. His gray beard and weathered face gave him the look of an Old Testament prophet. "We find out what he needs." Tracker pulled out his phone. "Note says Desmond. Last name Quinn, based on the context about family reputation. That's specific enough. I'll check school records, cross-reference with timing and location." By morning, they had more than a name. They had a story that made Maverick's chest ache. Desmond Quinn, 10 years old, currently enrolled at Lincoln Elementary. Parents Randall and Christine Quinn, both serving sentences at county facilities for drug trafficking and endangering a minor. Emergency guardianship granted 4 years earlier to Nora Quinn, daughter of Randall Quinn and his first wife, who had died when Nora was 15. Nora Quinn, 19 years old, working 2 jobs while attending community college part-time. Employment records showed her at a gas station 40 hours a week plus weekend shifts at a retail store. Barely keeping up with tuition payments for a nursing program. The address led them to a 4-story apartment building scheduled for demolition within the year. The exterior concrete crumbled in chunks, exposing rebar. Windows were patched with cardboard. The entrance lock had been broken for so long nobody remembered it working. "Christ," Tracker muttered. He'd been raised in poverty himself, but this crossed into something worse: active neglect by landlords who viewed tenants as temporary obstacles. They dug deeper. Property records revealed the owner, Vernon Standish, had been trying to empty the building for 8 months. Most tenants had left after he accidentally shut off heat during a cold snap. The remaining holdouts, mostly poor families with nowhere else to go, had organized, threatened legal action. Standish had responded by filing eviction notices and making anonymous complaints to various city agencies, including social services. The complaint filed 6 weeks earlier claimed Nora Quinn was providing inadequate care for her minor brother. The investigators' notes painted a damning picture: behind on rent, minimal food in the apartment, child underweight, guardian overwhelmed. "They're going to take the kid," Maverick said, his voice flat. "Social services is building a case. The investigation was scheduled to conclude in 2 weeks. If Nora couldn't demonstrate stable housing and adequate resources, Desmond would enter foster care." "Does she know?" someone asked. "She knows," Widow said, looking up from her laptop. "The club's treasurer and data specialist, she'd accessed the legal filing system. She was served notice 3 weeks ago. She's been scrambling to find new housing, but her credit's shot and nobody will rent to her. Landlords see the family name and shut the door." Maverick remembered that particular trap. After his exoneration, he'd spent 2 years rebuilding a life that had been stolen from him. The record was expunged, but the stigma remained. Potential employers and landlords found ways to disqualify him without stating the real reason. "What's the rent situation?" Chains asked. "2,000 behind," Widow reported. "She's been paying what she can, but it's not enough. Standish wants them out, so he's not working with her. He'd rather they default completely so he can fast-track eviction." The club sat in silence. $2,000 was manageable. They'd pulled together more for less pressing causes. But money alone wouldn't solve this. A family marked by criminal history, a guardian barely an adult herself, a system designed to separate rather than support. "There's more," Tracker said. "The kid hasn't seen a doctor in 3 years. Not because Nora doesn't care. She can't afford the insurance co-pays. His school records show declining performance. But the teachers note he's trying hard. He's just hungry and exhausted. And he's 1 semester away from losing his guardian," Widow added. "Nora's nursing program requires clinical rotations starting next month. Full-time, during school hours. She can't afford after-school care for Desmond. If she drops out, she loses her 1 shot at a career that could support them. If she continues, she risks losing custody because Desmond would be unsupervised." The trap was perfect, systematic, crushing. At every turn, Nora and Desmond faced choices between impossible and worse. Maverick thought of the note, of a small boy asking strangers how to be strong. Thought of his own childhood, his own years in prison, the way society punished the same people over and over for crimes they hadn't committed. "We get her stable first," he said. "Housing, food, medical care. The foundation. Then we deal with the school situation, the bullying. Then we address the clinical rotation problem." "And Standish?" Chains asked. "We talked to him," Maverick said quietly. Nicely at first. The next evening, Maverick waited outside Sam's gas station until Nora Quinn emerged for her break. He recognized her immediately, a young woman who looked simultaneously 29 and 19, her face tight with exhaustion, her uniform polo shirt hanging loose on a frame that had lost too much weight. She saw him and stopped, keys clutched between her fingers as a makeshift weapon. He saw her eyes register the leather vest, the patches, the motorcycle parked under the streetlight. "Nora Quinn?" He kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. "My name is Maverick. I need 5 minutes of your time." "I don't have 5 minutes." Her voice carried defensive steel. "And I don't have money, drugs, or information if that's what you're looking for. I'm looking to help you." He pulled out Desmond's note, held it so she could see. "Your brother left this on my motorcycle yesterday." Color drained from her face. She reached for the note, then stopped, uncertain. Maverick stepped forward and handed it to her. Watching her read words she'd probably heard before, Desmond's constant question about strength and shame and invisibility. "He's fine," she said quickly, defensively. "He's fed. He's safe. He goes to school. I know we're behind on rent, but I'm working on it. The social services investigation is going to show that you're 19 years old, working 80 hours a week, barely keeping your head above water, and about to lose your brother because the system would rather split you up than help you stay together." Maverick interrupted. "I know. I've seen the file." Her chin lifted. "You have no right." "I spent 10 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit," he said flatly. "Got out, couldn't find work, couldn't find housing, spent 2 years living in a friend's garage while I rebuilt from nothing. I know what it's like to be guilty by association. I know what it's like to carry someone else's crime on your back. And I know what it's like to need help and be too proud or too scared to ask for it." Nora stared at him, her jaw tight. Behind her, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting harsh shadows across her face. She looked like she wanted to believe him and was terrified to try. "Your brother reached out," Maverick said gently. "Now I'm reaching back. My club, we can help. Housing, legal support, resources. We can keep you and Desmond together." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you do that? You don't know us." "Because 20 years ago I was a kid like Desmond asking the same questions. Because nobody helped me, and I remember what that cost." Maverick gestured toward the gas station. "You've got 2 minutes left on your break. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me prove we're worth trusting." "I don't." Nora's voice cracked. "I can't lose him. He's all I have. If I screw this up, if I trust the wrong people." "You won't lose him," Maverick said. "Not on our watch." Nora looked at the note in her hands, at her brother's careful handwriting. Maverick saw the moment her defenses cracked, not broke, but cracked enough to let hope leak through. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The club moved with military precision. Chains arranged a meeting with Vernon Standish, just him and Maverick initially. They arrived at Standish's office in a strip mall, two men in leather vests walking through a door marked Standish Property Management. The secretary tried to intercept them. Chains smiled politely and kept walking. Vernon Standish looked up from his desk, his expression shifting from annoyance to calculation to fear in rapid succession. He was a soft man in an expensive suit, the kind who wielded power through lawyers and eviction notices. "Gentlemen," he said carefully, "I don't believe we have an appointment." "We don't need one," Chains said. "We're here about the building on Sycamore Street, specifically about Nora and Desmond Quinn. I can't discuss individual tenants." "You filed a complaint with social services," Maverick interrupted. "Anonymous tip about inadequate care. Same week you filed eviction notices." "Interesting timing." Standish's face reddened. "Those tenants are in violation of their lease terms. I have every right." "You have a building with 37 housing code violations," Chains said mildly. "Faulty electrical, water damage, structural concerns. I've got the inspection reports right here." He dropped a folder on the desk. "Funny how you've been ignoring tenant complaints while simultaneously trying to force them out. That building is scheduled for demolition. I'm within my rights to terminate leases." "With proper notice and assistance, yes," Maverick said. "What you're doing is harassment, making living conditions intolerable, filing false complaints, targeting vulnerable tenants who can't fight back." Standish stood, his hands flat on the desk. "Get out of my office. If you think you can intimidate me." "We're not here to intimidate," Chains said. "We're here to negotiate. Nora Quinn gets 6 months rent-free to transition to new housing. You drop the eviction proceedings. You withdraw your complaint to social services." "Or what?" Standish sneered. "Or we make sure every code violation gets reported, documented, and prosecuted," Maverick said. "We make sure your tenants get legal representation. We make sure reporters know you've been systematically targeting poor families. We make sure your business gets the attention it deserves. And," Chains added softly, "we make sure you understand that Nora and Desmond Quinn are under our protection. Any further harassment of them will be taken personally." The threat hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Standish's face had gone from red to pale. "6 months," he said finally. "But they're out after that. I have demolition contracts." "6 months," Chains agreed. "That's all we need." They left Standish in his office, visibly shaken. In the parking lot, Maverick allowed himself a tight smile. "That's step 1, he said. "Now the hard part. Finding stable housing for Nora and Desmond required creativity. Rental applications wanted credit checks, employment history, references. Nora's credit was damaged by medical debt from her mother's final illness. Her employment history showed frequent job changes, not because she was unreliable, but because she'd been cobbling together whatever work paid. Widow found the solution through her network. A club member's mother owned a small house on the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, old but solid, in a neighborhood with decent schools. She'd been renting it to college students, but the last group had trashed it. She'd planned to sell rather than deal with more tenants. "I'll rent it to the girl," Mrs. Patterson said when Widow explained. She was a tough woman in her 70s who'd raised 3 sons alone. "Lord knows I understand doing what you have to do. $750 a month, utilities separate. First and last, plus deposit. That was $3,500 up front. Money Nora didn't have. The club pooled it in under an hour. Then came furnishing. The house was empty except for appliances. Club members donated what they could. A couch from someone's garage, beds, a kitchen table, dishes, linens. Nothing matched, but it was clean and functional. Tracker arranged for a lawyer from legal aid to help Nora document her compliance with social services requirements. They photographed the new house, gathered employment records, obtained letters of support from employers and professors. They built a case that Nora was providing adequate care despite challenging circumstances. But the clinical rotation problem remained unsolved. Nora's nursing program required 3 months of full-time hospital work starting in April. Desmond would be in school, but she needed coverage for early mornings and late afternoons. After-school programs cost money she didn't have. The solution came from an unexpected source. Widow's daughter ran a tutoring center. "Send the kid to me," she said. "He can do homework there, get some academic support, eat dinner with my kids. No charge. Consider it an investment." "Why would you do that?" Nora asked when Maverick presented the offer. They sat in her new living room, still barely furnished but clean and warm, a vast improvement over the crumbling apartment. "Because we take care of our own," Maverick said. "And you're our own now, whether you planned on it or not." Nora covered her face with her hands. For a moment Maverick thought she was crying, but when she looked up, her expression showed something fiercer than tears, determination forged in gratitude. "I'm going to pay this back," she said. "Somehow. Every dollar. You can pay it forward," Maverick corrected. "Help someone else when you're on your feet. That's how this works." But Desmond's situation at school remained unaddressed. The bullying continued, systematic and cruel. Teachers looked away. Administration did nothing. The Quinn name carried too much stigma. Maverick attended one of Desmond's soccer practices, standing at a distance, watching. The boy was small but fast, with good instincts. But during scrimmage, other kids deliberately tripped him, accidentally elbowed him, excluded him from passes. The coach, a volunteer parent, ignored it all. After practice, Maverick approached Desmond directly for the first time. The boy recognized him, his eyes widening. "You found my note," Desmond said. "I did." Maverick crouched to eye level. "You asked how to be strong, want to know what I learned?" Desmond nodded, silent. "Being strong doesn't mean taking it alone," Maverick said. "It means knowing when to ask for help. It means standing up not just for yourself, but for others who need it. It means deciding who you are, not letting others decide for you." "How do you do that?" Desmond's voice was small. "When everyone already decided, you show them they're wrong," Maverick said. "And you let people who see the real you stand beside you. Your sister sees you. I see you. My club sees you. And we're going to make sure everyone else sees you too." The plan came together over the next week. The club gathered documentation of the systematic bullying Desmond had endured. They obtained statements from other parents whose children had been targeted. They researched the school's anti-bullying policies and found numerous violations. Then they requested a meeting with the principal, the school board liaison, and the district superintendent. The request, delivered by the club's lawyer, carried enough weight that the meeting was granted. On a Tuesday morning in March, 150 motorcycles rolled into Lincoln Elementary's parking lot. The sound was earthquake deep, vibrating windows, rattling in chests. Classes stopped. Teachers rushed to windows. Children pressed faces against glass, mouths forming perfect O's of wonder. The motorcycles formed precise rows, engines cutting to silence on some unspoken signal. 150 men and women dismounted, leather vests gleaming in morning sun, patches declaring allegiance and identity. They moved with military precision, walking toward the school entrance in a formation that suggested both respect and unstoppable force. Inside, Principal Harrison met them in the lobby, her face pale. Behind her stood the school board liaison and district superintendent, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. "We're here about Desmond Quinn," Chain said. His voice carried authority that made even the superintendent straighten. "We understand you've been having some issues with student treatment. I'm not sure what you've heard, but—" Principal Harrison began. Maverick stepped forward, dropping a folder on the lobby desk. 6 months of documented bullying, physical harassment, verbal abuse, social exclusion, all witnessed by teachers, none addressed by administration. We have dates, times, and witnesses. Furthermore, the club's lawyer added, stepping up beside Maverick, we have evidence of discriminatory treatment based on parental background. Desmond Quinn has been systematically targeted because of his family situation, and your staff has failed to provide a safe educational environment as required by state law. The superintendent cleared his throat. These incidents will stop, Chain said, not loudly but with finality that allowed no argument. Desmond Quinn will receive the same protection and support as every other student. The children who have been harassing him will face appropriate consequences. and your staff will receive training on bias and bullying prevention. Or, Principal Harrison asked, trying to recover some authority. Or we pursue this formally, the lawyer said. Legal action, media attention, and a very thorough investigation of how this school treats vulnerable students. Your choice. Behind them, 150 people stood in absolute silence. The threat wasn't violence, it was visibility, exposure, the promise that Desmond Quinn would never be invisible again. We'll need to review, the superintendent began. Today, Maverick said. You implement changes today. Anti-bullying assembly, direct communication to parents about harassment consequences, and you personally apologize to Desmond Quinn for failing to protect him. The superintendent's face reddened, but he nodded. That afternoon, Desmond sat in the principal's office with Nora beside him, Maverick standing behind them. Principal Harrison, looking genuinely chastened, apologized for the school's failures. She outlined specific steps being implemented: supervised lunch periods, mandatory sensitivity training, a buddy system for students being bullied. You deserved better, she said to Desmond. I'm sorry we didn't provide it. Desmond said nothing, but his hand found Nora's. His sister squeezed back, her expression fierce with protective love. The real change happened in the following weeks. The boys who'd bullied Desmond faced suspension and mandatory counseling. Their parents, confronted with documented evidence and the superintendent's stern attention, suddenly found time to address their children's behavior. More importantly, other students began treating Desmond differently. The motorcycle club's arrival had been witnessed by the entire school. Kids who'd previously ignored or mocked him now approached cautiously, respectfully. Some even asked to sit with him at lunch. Desmond remained wary, but slowly, incrementally, he began to relax. Maverick established a weekly mentoring session. Every Saturday morning, he picked up Desmond and they worked on a project together, sometimes rebuilding an old motorcycle engine, sometimes volunteering at a food bank, sometimes just talking. You asked how to be strong when people think you're garbage, Maverick said one afternoon while they were sorting donated clothes. Here's the truth. Their thoughts don't define you. Your choices do. Your actions do. How you treat others do. But what if their thoughts affect how people treat me? Desmond asked. He'd grown more talkative in recent weeks, less guarded. Then you find people who see clearly, Maverick said. You build family with people who choose you, not just people who share your blood. You understand that sometimes the greatest strength is accepting help. Desmond considered this. Like Nora did, when you offered help. Exactly like that, Maverick confirmed. Your sister is one of the strongest people I know, not because she did everything alone, but because she kept fighting even when it would have been easier to give up. And then, when help came, she was strong enough to accept it. The kids at school still whisper sometimes, Desmond admitted, about my parents. They probably will for a while, Maverick said honestly. People love stories, especially dramatic ones. But you're writing your own story now. Every day you decide what it says about you. By late March, the social services investigation concluded. The inspector visited the new house, reviewed Nora's employment records and educational progress, met with Desmond's teachers and the club members providing support. Her final report noted that while the situation remained challenging, Nora had demonstrated exceptional dedication and had successfully created a stable environment with appropriate support systems. The case was closed in Nora's favor. Custody remained with her. Desmond was not going into foster care. When Maverick delivered the news, Nora broke down completely, not with despair this time, but with relief so profound she couldn't stand. She sat on her second-hand couch and sobbed while Desmond held her hand, his own face stunned with hope. You did this, Maverick said. We just helped level the playing field. I couldn't have done it without you, Nora said when she could speak. Any of you. That's the point, Maverick said. Nobody should have to do it alone. Desmond's 11th birthday fell on a Saturday in April. He'd told Nora he didn't want a party. He'd learned years ago that wanting things only led to disappointment. But Nora had quietly coordinated with Maverick anyway. The morning started normally. Nora made pancakes, actual pancakes, not the cheap frozen kind, and presented Desmond with a small wrapped package. Inside was a jacket, warm and new in his favorite blue. Thank you, he said, his smile tentative but real. "That's not your only present," Nora said mysteriously. Around noon, the sound began. Distant at first, a low rumble that might have been thunder, but it grew steadily louder, more distinct, clearly mechanical. Desmond went to the window of their small house, his brow furrowed. Down the street, motorcycles appeared. Not one or two, but dozens. They came in a procession that seemed endless, chrome glinting in spring sunshine, leather-clad riders sitting tall. The sound was enormous, overwhelming, beautiful. Neighbors emerged from houses, drawn by the impossible spectacle. 150 motorcycles rolled slowly down their quiet street, engines throttling in synchronized thunder. They filled the road, lined the curbs, parked in every available space. Desmond stood frozen at the window, his mouth open. "Nora?" "Happy birthday, little brother," she said, her own eyes bright. Maverick dismounted first, walking toward the house with deliberate ceremony. Behind him, 150 people did the same, men and women in leather and denim, some carrying packages, all wearing expressions of protective pride. The front door opened before Maverick could knock. Desmond stood there, small and overwhelmed and trying very hard not to cry. "We don't do small birthday parties," Maverick said. "Hope that's okay." The celebration filled the small house and spilled into the yard. Club members brought food, burgers, hot dogs, sides, drinks, an enormous cake decorated with motorcycle designs. Neighbors, invited by the club, brought smaller gifts and uncertain smiles. Desmond's few friends from school arrived, their eyes wide at the gathered assembly. But the real gift came as the party wound down. Chains presented Desmond with a document, thick paper, ornate lettering, signed by every club member present. "This declares that you and Nora are under our protection," Chains said formally. "Part of our extended family. It means you're never alone. It means when you need help, you ask. It means you belong." Desmond held the document with trembling hands. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do you care about me?" "Because you had the courage to leave a note on a stranger's motorcycle," Maverick said. "Because you asked an important question. Because your sister has fought like hell to keep you safe. Because everyone deserves family, even if they have to build it themselves. And because," Chains added, "you're worth caring about, not despite your last name or your history, but because of who you choose to be. We see that choice. We honor it." Desmond looked around at the sea of faces, rough, weathered, marked by their own hard histories, but looking at him with genuine warmth. Then he looked at Nora, who nodded encouragement. "Thank you," Desmond said. His voice was small but steady. "Thank you for seeing me." The social worker's final visit came 2 weeks later. She found Desmond and Nora in their modest but stable home, surrounded by evidence of community support. She interviewed Desmond privately, following protocol. "Are you happy here?" she asked. Desmond considered the question seriously. "I'm safe," he said. "Nora takes good care of me. And we have help now. Lots of help." "The motorcycle club," the social worker said neutrally. "They're my family," Desmond said simply. "Not blood family, but the kind you choose. Maverick says that counts more." The social worker made notes, her expression unreadable. But when she left, she told Nora the case was permanently closed. No further monitoring required. Nora started her clinical rotations in May. Every morning, Desmond went to the tutoring center where Widow's daughter helped him with homework and fed him dinner. He made friends there, other kids from complicated families, other kids rebuilding from hard places. His grades improved. His weight increased to healthy levels. The hollow look faded from his face, replaced by something that resembled peace. At school, the bullying didn't entirely stop. Old prejudices died hard, but it diminished to ignorable levels. More importantly, Desmond learned to respond with the quiet confidence Maverick had been teaching him. When a boy made a comment about his parents, Desmond said simply, "My parents made mistakes. I'm making different choices," and walked away, head high. The following spring, Nora graduated from her nursing program. The ceremony took place in a college gymnasium decorated with generic banners and filled with proud families. Nora sat with her graduating class, wearing a blue gown and a smile that made her look young for the first time in years. In the audience, Desmond sat front row, wearing a vest Maverick had helped him earn through community service. The vest was leather, sized for a child, marked with a patch that read, "Defined by who I choose to be." Beside him sat Maverick, Chains, Widow, and dozens of other club members. They'd cleared their schedules, ridden 2 hours, filled an entire section of bleachers. When Nora's name was called, their applause was thunder. Nora crossed the stage, accepted her diploma, and looked directly at her people. Her eyes found Desmond first, always Desmond, then Maverick, then the sea of leather and support. She raised her diploma like a trophy, and the club roared approval. After the ceremony, in the parking lot, Nora hugged Maverick fiercely. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said. "Any of you." "Yes, you could have," Maverick corrected gently. "You were already doing it. We just made it possible to keep doing it without breaking." "That's everything," Nora said. Desmond approached, his vest bearing its proud declaration. Maverick looked at the boy who'd left a desperate note 8 months earlier. No longer hollow-eyed and invisible, but present and seen. "You asked how to be strong when people think you're garbage," Maverick said. "You want to know the answer I found?" "Yes," Desmond said. "You prove them wrong every single day. Not with words, but with choices, with how you treat people, with who you decide to be." Maverick gestured to the assembled club. "And you let people who see your real worth stand beside you. That's strength, not standing alone, but knowing when to accept the hands reaching toward you." Desmond looked at his vest, at his sister, at the club that had become family. "I'm not invisible anymore," he said. "No," Maverick agreed. "You never were. Some people just weren't looking in the right way." The celebration continued at the clubhouse, a proper party with food and music and genuine joy. Neighbors and friends mixed with club members, barriers dissolving in shared celebration. Nora's professors came, proud of their student who'd overcome so much. Desmond's teachers came, witnessing the support system that had transformed their struggling student. As evening fell, Desmond found Maverick on the clubhouse porch, watching the party through large windows. "I wrote you something," Desmond said. He held out a folded paper, not worn soft this time, but crisp and new. Maverick unfolded it. The handwriting was still careful, but more confident now, less desperate. "You showed me that strong means asking for help. That family means people who choose you, not just blood. That my name is mine to define. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for teaching me that where I come from doesn't have to determine where I'm going." Desmond. Maverick read it twice, his chest tight. When he looked up, Desmond was watching him with an expression that had traveled miles from the frightened child who'd left the first note. "You're going to be okay," Maverick said. "You know that, right?" "I know," Desmond said, "because I'm not alone." Inside, the party continued. Celebration of endings and beginnings, of obstacles overcome and futures reclaimed. Nora had her nursing degree and a job offer from County Hospital. Desmond had stable grades and genuine friendships. Together, they had a home, a community, and a future they'd fought to keep. The Quinn name no longer meant shame and judgment. It meant resilience. It meant two people who'd refused to be broken by circumstances they didn't create. It meant family forged in adversity and supported by chosen bonds. Maverick stood watching them through the window, Nora laughing with Widow, Desmond showing his vest to younger kids with shy pride. Two people who'd been drowning, now standing on solid ground. Sometimes strength looked like a 19-year-old working 80 hours a week to keep her brother safe. Sometimes it looked like a 10-year-old boy leaving a note on a stranger's motorcycle, admitting he needed help. Sometimes it looked like 150 people on motorcycles, riding to protect the vulnerable. Strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about reaching out when darkness pressed close. It was about accepting the hands that reached back. It was about building family from choice and loyalty rather than blood and obligation. Desmond Quinn had asked how to be strong when everyone thought you were garbage. The answer, Maverick thought, was simple and profound. You found people who saw your worth, and you let them help you remember it yourself. You carried each other through the hard times. You proved every day that you were more than the worst things that had happened to you or anyone who shared your name. You chose who you would become, and you chose who would stand beside you while you became it. In the gathering darkness, with light spilling from the clubhouse and the sound of celebration rising like music, Maverick smiled. Behind him, Desmond's note rested in his pocket, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing anyone could do was admit they couldn't do it alone. And sometimes the strongest thing anyone could do was answer that admission with a simple promise: you don't have to. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.